In 1890s New York, the typical Gilded Age millionaire literally spent more on a single dinner party than an average worker made in 15 years, and sometimes they'd throw those parties on horseback just because they could. Before we start, quick thing, if you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, tonight we're heading to the Gilded Age, but first get yourself comfortable. I mean properly comfortable. Adjust those pillows, pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy for what comes next. Your eyes snap open in darkness. For a moment, panic grips you as you realize you're not in your familiar bed. The mattress beneath you feels different, too plush, too perfect. The sheets against your skin aren't your usual cotton, but something impossibly smooth, cool, like water flowing over your body. Confusion gives way to awareness as your eyes adjust to the gloom, revealing an enormous bedroom with ceilings so high they disappear into shadow. This isn't your bedroom. This isn't even your century. The first thing you notice is the air, stale despite the massive room, tainted with coal smoke that seeped in from outside. Next comes the weight of the covers, not one, but 6 heavy silk quilts and a fur throw that would have cost a year's wages for most people in 1895. You're in a mahogany 4-poster bed that could fit 8 people comfortably, with silk canopy and hand-embroidered curtains that probably took some poor seamstress's eyesight to complete. This bed alone would bankrupt most families, and it's just where you sleep. You take a deep breath, trying to process what's happening. Unlike your warm, temperature-controlled modern bedroom, this massive chamber is chilly despite a fire dying in the marble fireplace across the room. Because insulation, not really a priority when you have servants to stoke your fires all night long. And speaking of servants, a soft knock at the door sends your heart racing. "Enter," you call out, your voice sounding strange to your own ears. The door swings open and a uniformed man in his 50s steps in. He's dressed impeccably in black and white, his posture military straight. Behind him, 4 younger men in similar uniforms follow, each carrying silver trays. "Good morning, sir," the older man says, his tone deferential but not servile. "It's 7:15. I trust you slept well?" This, you realize with a start, is your valet. Not just any servant, but your personal manservant who probably knows more about your daily habits than your own wife does. Unlike your quick shower and coffee morning routine, you're about to experience how the 1% of the 1% start their day in the Gilded Age. "Shall I open the curtains, sir?" he asks, though he's already striding toward the massive windows. He pulls a cord, and mechanically the heavy velvet drapes part, revealing a grey New York morning. Fifth Avenue stretches below, already bustling with carriages and early delivery wagons. "Jesus," you mutter, taking in the view of Central Park across the street. "I mean, yes, thank you." The valet doesn't react to your slip. He's used to rich men being eccentric. He probably thinks you're nursing a hangover from whatever exclusive club you visited last night. "Your morning coffee, sir," he says, nodding to one of the younger servants who steps forward with a silver tray bearing a single cup of coffee in a hand-painted Sèvres porcelain cup that costs more than most people's monthly rent. You sit up, accepting the coffee. It's strong but laced with cream and sugar. Apparently your Gilded Age self has a sweet tooth. "Richardson," you say, the name coming to you from nowhere. "What's the schedule today?" The valet, Richardson, doesn't miss a beat. You have a breakfast meeting with Mr. Morgan and Mr. Carnegie at 9:30 in your private dining car. Your train departs Grand Central Depot at 9 sharp. This afternoon, Mrs. Astor's weekly reception at 3, which Mrs. Vanderhughes insisted you attend. Dinner this evening at Delmonico's with the governor and several gentlemen from the Railroad Commission. Jesus Christ, you have a private dining car, like an entire railroad car that belongs to you just for eating breakfast in. While you process this, Richardson is directing the other servants. One opens a set of double doors, revealing a bathroom that's bigger than your entire apartment back home. Inside, a clawfoot tub the size of a small boat is already filled with steaming water, rose petals floating on the surface. The brass fixtures aren't brass at all. They're solid gold. The sink basin appears to be carved from a single piece of marble. "Shall we proceed with your bath, sir?" Richardson asks. You nod, because what else can you do? Two servants step forward to help you out of your silk pajamas. This is apparently normal, being dressed and undressed like a life-sized doll. The concept of privacy as you understand it doesn't exist for the ultra-wealthy of the Gilded Age. Your body is just another possession to be maintained by staff. "Wait," you say, suddenly uncomfortable with the idea of multiple grown men watching you bathe. I can manage the bath myself this morning." Richardson's eyebrow twitches, the servant equivalent of a dramatic gasp. "As you wish, sir. Most unusual, but we shall wait in the dressing room. Ring when you're ready to be dried and dressed." The servants withdraw, leaving you alone in the palatial bathroom. Unlike your quick morning shower, bathing in 1895 is a production. The water is scented with imported oils. Beside the tub sits an array of soaps, each in its own silver dish. French milled, English lavender, Italian olive oil, the international array of cleansing products is dizzying. You slip into the bath, and for a moment the luxury is overwhelming. The water is perfectly heated, a luxury few could afford in an era when every drop of hot water required someone to haul fuel and tend a fire. As you soak, you notice something disturbing on your hands. Dirt under your manicured nails. Not just any dirt. Coal dust. The evidence of your empire, perhaps. You scrub it away, wondering what kind of industrial baron you've become. Steel, railroad, oil, banking, whatever it is, you're clearly at the top of the heap in an age when the richest 1% owned more wealth than the bottom 99% combined. The bathroom door cracks open. "Sir," Richardson's voice floats in. "The time?" "Yes, coming," you say, suddenly aware that you've spent 10 precious minutes just sitting in water, an incredible luxury when servants measure their workday by the clock. You step out of the tub, and immediately a servant appears with a warmed towel, another with a terry cloth robe. Embarrassment floods you as they efficiently dry your body, but you fight it down. This is normal for them, expected. They probably find it strange that you tried to bathe alone. "Would Sir prefer the grey worsted wool suit or the navy pinstripe for the meeting with Mr. Morgan?" Richardson asks, leading you into a dressing room larger than most people's entire homes. The walls are lined with custom-built mahogany cabinets displaying more clothing than you've owned in your entire life. Dozens of suits, hundreds of shirts, rows of shoes each on their own wooden tree, an entire cabinet just for cufflinks and tie pins, many glittering with diamonds and precious stones. "The Navy," you say, because it seems like a safe choice for meeting robber barons. What follows is a 20-minute production of getting you dressed. First, the underwear, not boxers or briefs, but a full-body, one-piece cotton union suit that buttons up the front. Then wool socks held up by garters, a crisp white shirt with detachable collar and cuffs, a silk tie precisely knotted. a waistcoat, what you'd call a vest, with pearl buttons, and finally the suit jacket itself. "Your watch, sir?" Richardson says, presenting a solid gold pocket watch on a chain. You examine it, a Patek Philippe with your monogram engraved on the case, probably worth the equivalent of a modern luxury car. While you're being dressed, another servant enters. "Mr. Vander Hughes, your breakfast is served in the morning room." Your stomach growls on cue. The smell of bacon, eggs, fresh bread and coffee wafts up from downstairs. Unlike your rushed modern breakfast, maybe a granola bar or a quick bowl of cereal, breakfast in the Gilded Age is a serious meal. "I'll be down momentarily," you say, trying to sound authoritative. Richardson gives final adjustments to your clothing, brushing invisible dust from your shoulders, straightening your already perfect tie. "Will there be anything else, sir?" You look around the opulent dressing room at the army of servants waiting to fulfill your every whim, at the wealth on display in just your morning routine alone. "No, that will be all. Thank you." The servants nod and withdraw, leaving you alone for the first time since you woke up. You catch sight of yourself in a full-length mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. Perfectly groomed, impeccably dressed in clothing that cost more than most people make in months. You look every inch the Gilded Age billionaire, and it's only 8 in the morning. You make your way out of the bedroom suite into a hallway lined with oil paintings in ornate gold frames. The carpet beneath your feet is so thick and plush you can barely hear your own footsteps. A grand staircase curves down to the main floor, the banister gleaming mahogany polished by servants' hands. 2 housemaids curtsy as you pass. A footman stands at attention near the bottom of the stairs. The house feels like a luxury hotel, except it's all yours, or at least belonging to whatever version of you woke up in 1895. The morning room is flooded with light from tall windows. The table, which could seat 12 comfortably, is set for 1, with fine china, crystal and sterling silver flatware. A butler stands by, ready to serve you. "Good morning, sir," he says, pulling out your chair. You sit down, somewhat dazed by the extravagance of it all. The table before you bears enough food for a small family. Steak, eggs, bacon, sausages, toast, muffins, fruit, coffee, and tea. Apparently, breakfast in the Gilded Age is a feast. "The morning paper, sir," the butler says, presenting you with the New York Times on a silver tray. The headline catches your eye. Workers strike at steel mill. Violence erupts as Pinkertons called in. With a sinking feeling, you wonder if it's your steel mill they're talking about. As you unfold the paper, another headline jumps out. Vander Hughes consolidates railroad holdings, competitors cry monopoly. That's when it fully hits you. In this world, you're not just wealthy, you're one of them. The notorious robber barons, the men who built America's industrial might on the backs of desperate workers, the names school children would learn about a century later with a mixture of awe and distaste. The butler coughs discreetly. "Sir, Mr. Richardson asked me to remind you that your carriage will be ready in 20 minutes for your journey to Grand Central." You nod, suddenly not very hungry, despite the feast before you. "Thank you. Will you be requiring anything else, sir?" You look around at the opulent room, the abundance of food, the servants waiting to fulfill your every whim. Outside these walls, people are literally fighting and dying in your name, or against it. "No," you say quietly, "that will be all." You're going to meet J.P. Morgan and Andrew Carnegie for breakfast in your private railroad car, and somehow you need to figure out how to navigate this world of extreme wealth and privilege, where your every comfort comes at someone else's expense. The butler withdraws, leaving you alone with your thoughts and the morning paper. You take a sip of coffee from a cup that probably costs as much as a factory worker makes in a month. Welcome to the Gilded Age. You've woken up as one of the richest men in America. The day has barely begun, and already you're learning that all that glitters is not gold. In the quiet morning room, surrounded by luxury that most people couldn't even imagine, you start to realize the weight of the golden chains you've woken up wearing. You're at the pinnacle of society, but at what cost? As you prepare to leave for your meeting with your fellow industrialists, you can't help but wonder, in a world of such extremes, what does it really mean to have it all? You step outside your Fifth Avenue mansion into the crisp morning air. The noise hits you, first horses' hooves clopping on cobblestones, carriage wheels grinding, street vendors shouting. The smell follows horse manure mixed with coal smoke, a combination that defines city living in 1895. Not like your clean, regulated modern world with its emissions standards and sanitation departments. Your carriage waits at the bottom of the limestone steps. Not just any carriage, a gleaming black Brewster Landau with your monogram emblazoned on the door, pulled by 4 matched bay horses that probably cost more than most families make in 5 years. 2 footmen in forest green livery snap to attention as you approach. "Good morning, Mr. Vander Hughes," one says, opening the door with a white-gloved hand. Inside, the carriage is upholstered in butter-soft Moroccan leather. The windows are beveled crystal glass. A small cabinet reveals decanters of brandy, and whiskey, apparently morning drinking, is just another perk of being obscenely rich in the Gilded Age. As you settle into the plush seat, a thought hits you. You own people. Not literally, slavery's been over for 30 years, but practically. The coachman, the footman, the dozen house servants you've already encountered this morning, the hundreds of others working in your factories and offices and mines. They depend on you for their survival in an era with no social safety net, no unemployment benefits, no healthcare system. If you fire someone, their kids might starve. If you cut wages, families get evicted. If you ignore safety concerns in your factories, workers die. And from the newspaper headlines, it seems like your workers are currently striking against conditions you've imposed. Your stomach churns as the carriage lurches forward, joining the busy morning traffic headed downtown. Through the window, you see New York in all its Gilded Age contradictions. Ladies in Worth gowns stepping carefully over mud puddles, immigrant children in rags selling newspapers on corners. Construction everywhere, the city growing upward and outward at a frantic pace. "Look at that poor bastard," the coachman calls down to the footman riding beside him, not realizing you can hear every word. "Crushed his leg at the rail yard yesterday. Company just tossed him out without a penny. That's why I'd never work for Vander Hughes Rail. That son of a bitch would work us to death for an extra $1 in his pocket." The footman makes a shushing sound, nodding discreetly toward the carriage. Your blood runs cold. That's who you are here. That's your legacy. The traffic slows near Madison Square, and a beggar approaches the carriageman, missing an arm, his face gaunt with hunger. "Spare something for a veteran, sir?" he calls, his voice raspy. Before you can respond, one of your footmen jumps down and roughly shoves the man away. "Get back! You Mr. Vander Hughes doesn't concern himself with your kind." "Please," you call out, surprising yourself. "Give him this." You reach into your pocket and find a gold coin and eagle, $10, a week's wages for many workers. The footman looks shocked but does as instructed, handing the coin to the stunned beggar. "God bless you, sir," the man calls as your carriage pulls away. The footman resumes his position, clearly confused by your uncharacteristic generosity. You realize you've broken character. The real Vander Hughes apparently isn't known for random acts of kindness. The carriage turns onto 42nd Street and Grand Central Depot comes into view, not the soaring Beaux-Arts terminal of later years, but its more modest predecessor. Still, it's an impressive structure crowned with a glass and cast iron roof. Your carriage bypasses the main entrance, continuing around to a private gate where two uniformed guards snap to attention. Mr. Vander Hughes, one says, opening the gate to a private driveway that leads directly to the train platforms. Wealth in the Gilded Age means never having to mingle with the common folk. Your carriage stops beside a train platform where a single railroad car sits gleaming in the morning light, not connected to any train, just waiting for you. Holy shit, you mutter under your breath. This isn't just a private rail car, it's a palace on wheels, 60 feet long, painted a deep burgundy with gold leaf trim and your monogram emblazoned on the side. A uniformed porter stands at attention on the small platform at the rear of the car. "Good morning, Mr. Vander Hughes," the porter says, opening the door for you. "Mr. Morgan has arrived and is waiting inside. Mr. Carnegie sends his apologies. He's running a few minutes behind." You nod, trying to act like this is all completely normal, and step into another world. The interior of the railcar makes first-class airplane cabins look like cattle cars. The floors are covered in Persian carpets so thick your feet sink into them. The walls are panelled in hand-carved mahogany, polished to a mirror shine. Crystal chandeliers hang from a ceiling painted with classical scenes. Apparently, even the ceiling of your private railcar needs to show off your wealth. The main salon features plush velvet armchairs and sofas arranged around small tables. A fireplace, an actual working fireplace on a moving train, occupies one wall. At the far end, a dining table is set for breakfast with fine china, crystal and sterling silver. And there, standing by one of the windows with a glass of whiskey already in hand, despite the early hour, is J.P. Morgan himself. You recognize him immediately from history books, the bulbous, purplish nose, the result of a skin condition called rhinophyma that he hated having mentioned, the intense eyes under heavy brows, the immaculate tailoring of his suit, the most powerful banker in America, possibly the world, a man who once single-handedly stopped a national financial panic by locking other bankers in his library until they agreed to his terms. "Or Vander Hughes," he says, not bothering with a first name or pleasantries. "You're late. It's 8:50 a.m. Your meeting isn't until 9:30. Traffic," you say simply, figuring brevity is safer when you have no idea what your relationship with this titan of finance might be. Morgan grunts, draining his whiskey. "Help yourself," he says, gesturing to a sideboard laden with decanters. Carnegie's train was delayed. Something about a workers' demonstration on the tracks. Damned nuisance. You pour yourself a small whiskey, mostly for show. "Quite. I've been looking at those reports you sent over," Morgan continues, fixing you with a stare so intense you have to force yourself not to look away. "The Western expansion numbers are solid, but this business with the strikes," he trails off, raising a bushy eyebrow. You scramble for a response that won't reveal your complete ignorance of your own business affairs. "Yes, well, labour troubles are an unfortunate reality these days." Morgan snorts. Fisk would have had those men shot and replaced by now. Jim Fisk, another railroad tycoon notorious for his ruthlessness. Your apparent peer group is a rogues gallery of the most cutthroat capitalists in American history. "I have my own methods," you say carefully. "Indeed you do," Morgan says, a hint of grudging respect in his tone. "Your handling of the Burlington situation was impressive, cold-blooded, but effective. Didn't think you had it in you." Before you can figure out what terrible thing you supposedly did to the Burlington Railroad, the door opens and in walks Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate. Shorter than you expected, with a grey beard and the hint of his Scottish accent still present despite decades in America, a self-made man who started as a bobbin boy in a cotton factory and now controls the largest steel company in the world. "Gentlemen," Carnegie booms, surprisingly jovial for a man with his reputation. "Apologies for the delay. Some ungrateful workers decided to lie down on the tracks. Can you imagine? As if I don't pay them a perfectly adequate $3 a day to work only 12 hours in my mills." $3 for 12 hours of dangerous labor in a steel mill. You do the quick math, 25 cents an hour in blistering heat surrounded by molten metal and machinery that can kill in an instant. Morgan and Carnegie both laugh, clearly expecting you to join in. You manage a weak smile, a soft knock at the door, and the porter enters. "Gentlemen, breakfast is served, and the engineer informs me we'll be departing momentarily." You hadn't even noticed the train starting to move. The ride is so smooth. Through the windows, you see Grand Central Depot sliding away as your private palace on wheels begins its journey. The three of you move to the dining table, where a steward is already pouring coffee into fine bone china cups. The table is set with a feast that would feed a dozen people: smoked salmon, caviar, poached eggs, rashers of bacon, silver dishes of butter, baskets of fresh bread, and pastries. "Now then," Morgan says as he unfolds his napkin, "to business. The three of us control enough railroad stock to effectively set national freight rates. I propose we use that leverage." And just like that, you're participating in what is almost certainly an illegal conspiracy to fix prices across an entire industry. Price fixing that will raise costs for farmers shipping crops, for factories shipping goods, costs that will ultimately be passed down to regular people just trying to live their lives. The Interstate Commerce Act specifically forbids pooling arrangements, you say, recalling a dim fact from a long-ago history class. Morgan and Carnegie stare at you like you've grown a second head. "Since when do you care about government regulations?" Carnegie asks, genuine confusion in his voice. "Did your wife make you go to church yesterday?" He laughs at his own joke. Morgan is less amused. "The Interstate Commerce Commission is a paper tiger. Half the commissioners are former railroad men who will be looking for jobs with us when their terms end. They understand how business works." In other words, regulatory capture, the practice of industry controlling the very government bodies meant to oversee them, a problem that still exists in your own time. But here in the Gilded Age, it's not even hidden. It's just how business is done. "Of course," you say quickly. "I merely thought it worth mentioning the legal considerations." Morgan snorts. Legal considerations didn't stop you from bribing that entire state legislature last year. What was it you called it? An investment in governmental relations. Jesus Christ. Apparently, you're not just a ruthless businessman, but an outright criminal in this timeline. "Now then," Carnegie says, spreading caviar on toast with the casual air of a man who's forgotten that fish eggs are a luxury. "I've been thinking about your offer for the Pittsburgh Central line. I'm inclined to accept with certain conditions." You have no idea what offer he's talking about, but you nod as if you do. "I thought you might be. 15 million, not 12, Carnegie says, "and I want guaranteed shipping rates for my steel for the next decade." $15 million in 1895, money that's around $500 million in modern currency, and you're apparently negotiating this massive deal over breakfast. Morgan interjects, "What about the unions? Central's workers are organized. Will you handle that mess, or is Vander Hughes taking it on?" Carnegie waves a hand dismissively. "I've dealt with unions before." His face darkens momentarily, and you recall with a chill that this seemingly jovial man was responsible for the Homestead strike, where Pinkerton detectives and striking workers engaged in a gunfight that left 16 people dead. "My men can sort it out," you say vaguely. The train curves gently, and through the windows you see the Hudson River glittering in the morning sun. Your private car has now been coupled to a larger train heading north, though the ride remains so smooth you'd hardly know you were moving if not for the passing scenery. "Splendid," Carnegie says. "Now, what about our friend Huntington and his troublesome Southern Pacific? I heard rumours he's been meeting with your competitors." "Collis Huntington is not a concern," you say, trying to sound confident. Morgan fixes you with that unnerving stare again. "He controls enough track to cause problems if he aligns with the wrong people. Perhaps a friendly acquisition might be in order," Carnegie suggests, his tone making it clear that friendly is not what he means at all. "A hostile takeover, you mean?" Morgan says bluntly. "I prefer to think of it as aggressive negotiation," Carnegie replies with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. And there it is, the cutthroat reality of Gilded Age business. These men sitting with you, eating caviar in a private rail car worth millions, are casually discussing destroying another tycoon's business empire over breakfast, not for any greater economic good, not for the benefit of the customers or workers, but simply because they can, because power and wealth in this era are zero-sum games. "We could approach from different angles," you suggest, trying to sound like the titan of industry you apparently are. Morgan provides the financing pressure. I control enough connecting lines to isolate his key routes, and Carnegie, you trail off, not sure what a steel magnate brings to a railroad takeover. "My friendship with several newspaper publishers could ensure public opinion turns against him," Carnegie fills in smoothly, "and I do have the ear of certain influential congressmen." In other words, a coordinated attack, financial, operational, and political, designed to bring another wealthy man to his knees. The business equivalent of medieval warfare. Morgan nods appreciatively. "That's why I wanted this meeting. Three-pronged approach. Huntington won't know what hit him until it's too late." The porter appears with fresh coffee. "Gentlemen, we'll be arriving at Garrison in approximately 30 minutes. You have no idea why you're going to Garrison, a small town on the Hudson, but you nod as if this is expected. "Just enough time to finalize the details," Morgan says, pulling out a leather portfolio filled with papers. "I've had my men draw up the preliminary agreements." As Morgan and Carnegie dive into the legal minutiae of your business arrangement, you gaze out the window at the passing Hudson Valley. The autumn colours are stunning, the river a silver ribbon below steep cliffs. It's the same view that inspired the Hudson River School painters decades earlier. But you see it differently now. Those pristine forests, owned by timber companies that will clear-cut them without a second thought, that beautiful river, increasingly polluted by the factories sprouting along its banks, the picturesque small towns, filled with people working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, many of them children as young as 10. Everything has a price in the Gilded Age. Everything is a commodity to be bought, sold, exploited. "Vanderhughes?" Morgan's sharp voice cuts through your thoughts. "Are you listening? This paragraph concerns your liability in the event the ICC does decide to investigate." You turn back to the table, to these powerful men and their schemes. "Yes, of course." As you bend over the contracts that will further consolidate your control over the nation's vital infrastructure, a realization dawns. This is what being a billionaire means in the Gilded Age. Not just luxury and privilege, but power. The power to shape industries, to move markets, to decide the fates of thousands of workers with the stroke of a pen. And with that power comes the moral weight of how you use it. These men view workers as replaceable parts in their industrial machines, view regulations as inconveniences to be circumvented, view competitors as enemies to be crushed. Is that who you are in this world? Is that who you want to be? As the train glides smoothly toward Garrison, you face the uncomfortable truth that in the Gilded Age there is no clean money. The entire system is built on exploitation of workers, of natural resources, of government corruption. To be at the top of this system means having blood on your hands, metaphorically, if not literally. One last thing, Carnegie says as he signs the final document with a flourish. My wife is hosting a little gathering at our place in New York next week, just 100 or so of our closest friends. He chuckles at what passes for a small gathering among the ultra-wealthy. She specifically asked that you and Mrs. Van der Hughes attend. Apparently your wife made quite an impression at the Vanderbilt ball last month. You have a wife. Of course you do. Another detail about your Gilded Age life that you've just discovered. We wouldn't miss it, you say, wondering what kind of person would marry the ruthless robber baron you apparently are. The train begins to slow as it approaches Garrison Station. Outside, you can see a horse-drawn carriage waiting presumably for you and your breakfast companions. Excellent, Morgan says, collecting the signed papers. Gentlemen, I believe our business is concluded for now. A productive morning. As the train comes to a halt and the porter appears to assist with your departure, you take one last look around the opulent private car. The half-eaten breakfast that cost more than a labourer makes in a week. The fine china and crystal used once and then to be washed by servants. The sheer, staggering excess of it all. You've just participated in a conspiracy to manipulate national transportation prices and destroy a business rival. You've learned that you regularly bribe government officials and exploit workers. You've glimpsed the callous disregard for human suffering that characterizes the business leaders of this era, and it's still not even noon. After your breakfast conspiracy meeting with Morgan and Carnegie, you find yourself back in your carriage, headed toward Madison Square. The morning's business dealings have left a sour taste in your mouth, but there's no time to dwell on moral quandaries. Your social calendar beckons, and in the Gilded Age, social obligations are just as critical to survival as business ones. "Where to, sir?" your driver calls down. You consult the small leather notebook you found in your jacket pocket. Inside, in elegant handwriting, not yours, is a detailed schedule of your day. Home first, you reply, then to Mrs. Astor's at 3. Mrs. Astor, even you, with your limited historical knowledge, recognize that name. Caroline Astor, the Mrs. Astor, the self-appointed gatekeeper of New York society. The woman who, along with social arbiter Ward McAllister, created the famous 400, the definitive list of who mattered in New York society. Named because that was supposedly the number of people who could fit comfortably in her ballroom, though really it was about creating artificial scarcity in a world of expanding wealth. Getting on that list meant you'd arrived. Staying off it meant social death. Your carriage turns onto Fifth Avenue, rejoining the parade of wealth making its way up and down Manhattan's most fashionable street. Ladies in enormous hats stroll with parasols. Gentlemen tip their bowlers to acquaintances. Children in sailor suits are paraded by their nursemaids. It's a carefully orchestrated display of leisure and prosperity. As your carriage approaches your mansion, you notice something you missed in your morning departure. The building itself, 5 stories of limestone and marble, designed in the French Renaissance style that's all the rage among New York's elite. Massive bay windows, intricate cornices, a copper mansard roof already developing a green patina. The thing looks like a cross between a palace and a wedding cake. Your neighbours include the Vanderbilts, the Goulds, the Whitneys, who's who of Gilded Age wealth. Real estate values on this stretch of Fifth Avenue are among the highest in the world. The carriage stops and the footman leaps down to open your door. As you step out, you notice a woman watching you from one of the bay windows on the 2nd floor. She quickly moves away when your eyes meet. Your wife, perhaps? The butler opens the front door before you reach it. "Welcome home, sir. Madam is in the morning room and asked to see you upon your return." "Madam, your wife definitely has a name, but apparently even the household staff refers to her by her title rather than anything so personal as a name. The formality of Gilded Age life continues to astound you." "Thank you," you say, handing off your hat and gloves to a waiting footman. "I'll see her now." The butler looks momentarily surprised at your courtesy. Apparently, "thank you" isn't a phrase that often passes your lips in this timeline, but quickly recovers his professional demeanour. "Very good, sir." You follow him through the grand entrance hall past priceless artwork and furnishings to a sunny room overlooking the side garden. And there she is, your wife. She sits at a delicate writing desk, penning correspondence on monogrammed stationery. Her morning dress is simpler than you expected, just cream silk with subtle lace trim but still obviously expensive. Her dark hair is piled atop her head in an intricate arrangement that must have taken her lady's maid an hour to create. She looks up as you enter, her expression guarded. "You wanted to see me?" you ask, suddenly nervous. "What kind of relationship do you have with this woman? Are you cruel to her? Distant? Loving?" "George," she says, using your apparent first name. "I wanted to confirm you'll be accompanying me to Caroline's this afternoon." She was quite pointed in her invitation that both of us should attend. Her tone is formal but not cold. This seems to be a marriage of business partners rather than passionate lovers typical for the upper classes of this era, where marriages were often strategic alliances between wealthy families. "Of course," you reply. 3 o'clock, correct? She nods, studying your face with a slight frown. "Are you feeling well? You seem different today." Apparently, your Gilded Age persona is consistent enough that even small deviations in behaviour are noticeable. "Just a demanding morning with Morgan and Carnegie," you say, which isn't exactly a lie. Her expression softens slightly. "Those men would try the patience of a saint." A brief, genuine smile crosses her face, and you catch a glimpse of the woman beneath the formal exterior. "Though I dare say you're their equal in stubbornness." There's almost affection in her voice. Perhaps this marriage isn't as cold as it first appeared. "Will you join me for luncheon?" she asks. "The new chef has prepared a quail salad, and I find I've grown tired of dining alone." The words carry weight. You dine alone often, it seems. You're not winning any Husband of the Year awards in this timeline. "I'd like that," you say, and mean it. Surprise flickers across her face, followed by a more genuine smile. "Wonderful. I'll have Burton set another place." Burton, presumably, the butler nods and withdraws silently. Lunch with your wife turns out to be a surprisingly pleasant affair. Her name, you discover through careful conversation, is Constance. She's intelligent, well-read, and possesses a dry wit that emerges when it's just the two of you. You learn that you have 2 children, a son away at boarding school, and a daughter who's currently in Europe with her governess on a cultural tour. The conspicuous absence of your children in the massive house seems to be perfectly normal for your social class. You're in an unusually good mood, Constance observes as you finish your coffee. Generally, meetings with your railroad associates leave you positively bearish. You shrug. Perhaps I'm learning to appreciate the finer things. You gesture to the elegant luncheon table, but your eyes stay on her. She actually blushes slightly. George, really, at our age? There's a history here you don't know, a relationship with its own patterns and boundaries that you're disrupting simply by being a bit kinder than usual. It makes you wonder what kind of man you are in this world. That simple courtesy and attention make your wife look at you like you've grown a second head. I should dress for Caroline's, Constance says, rising from the table. It wouldn't do to be late. Heaven forbid, you say with a touch of sarcasm that makes her smile again. You know how she is. 3 o'clock means 3 o'clock, not 5 past, not 5 minutes till. The woman runs her drawing room like a German train station. You laugh, and she looks pleased at having amused you. There's a glimpse of what might have been a warm relationship once, now buried under years of wealth and social obligation. Constance leaves to prepare, and you have some time to yourself. You wander the mansion, trying to learn more about your life here. Your private study is a masculinely decorated room with leather-bound books, hunting trophies. Apparently you've shot everything from lions to elephants, and a massive desk piled with paperwork. You leaf through some of the documents reports from railroad operations across the country, stock certificates, property deeds. The scale of your wealth is dizzying. You own land in 27 states. You have controlling interest in 12 different railroad companies. You have investments in steel mills, coal mines, oil fields, banks. One document catches your eye, a letter from your mine superintendent in Pennsylvania. Regarding your inquiry about safety improvements, I must advise against the expenditure at this time. The mesh screening would cost approximately $1,200 to install throughout the mine and would reduce casualties by an estimated 30%. However, it is more economical to simply replace workers as accidents occur. At current wages, we can hire 3 new men for the cost of 1 screening installation. I recommend we continue with present operations. And there, at the bottom, in what you recognize as your own handwriting, agreed, no action needed. Your stomach turns. You've literally calculated that workers' lives are worth less than basic safety equipment. And the worst part, this cold calculation is perfectly normal business practice in the Gilded Age. A soft knock at the door interrupts your moral crisis. Sir, it's Richardson, your valet. It's time to dress for Mrs. Astor's reception. The next half hour is consumed with the elaborate ritual of preparing for an afternoon social event. Different clothes from morning attire, of course, a frock coat instead of a morning coat, grey striped trousers, a silk waistcoat, a different pocket watch with a different chain, cuff links that cost more than most people's homes. By the time you descend the grand staircase, Constance is waiting in the entrance hall. She's transformed herself into a walking display of wealth. Her afternoon dress is a masterpiece of pale blue silk and lace with a cinched waist and a modest bustle. Sapphires and diamonds glitter at her throat and ears. Her hands are gloved in kid leather so fine it looks painted on. "You look beautiful," you say, and mean it. She seems pleased but confused by the compliment. "Thank you, George. Shall we?" Your carriage ride to the Astor Mansion on 5th Avenue and 65th Street is short but significant. You're literally traveling from the new money section of 5th Avenue to the old money stronghold. The geographical division mirrors the social one, the old Knickerbocker families on one end, the nouveau riche industrialists on the other, with an invisible but impenetrable barrier between them. "Or remember," Constance says quietly as your carriage joins the line approaching the Astor Mansion, "Caroline was particularly insistent we attend today. I suspect she has something specific in mind." "Any guess what?" you ask. "She mentioned the Newport season next summer." "Perhaps she's planning something, or—" She hesitates. "There's been talk about her son John and our Elizabeth." A potential marriage alliance, you realise. Your absent daughter is being considered as a match for the Astor heir. Such a union would solidify your family's social position while injecting the Astors with fresh capital, a perfect Gilded Age arrangement. "I see," you say neutrally, wondering how you feel about essentially selling your daughter to raise your social status. The Astor Mansion comes into view, another limestone palace, though more restrained and elegant than the flashier homes of the new millionaires. A line of carriages disgorges expensively dressed guests. "Do try to be civil to Ward McAllister," Constance murmurs as your carriage pulls up. "I know you find him ridiculous, but he still has Caroline's ear." Ward McAllister, the self-appointed social arbiter who created the 400 list with Mrs. Astor, a man so obsessed with social minutiae that he once wrote, "It takes 4 generations to make a gentleman." By that calculation, no one who made their fortune after the Revolution would qualify, conveniently excluding all the new industrial millionaires threatening the old guard's dominance. "I'll be the soul of courtesy," you promise, as the footman opens your carriage door. The reception is already in full swing when you enter the Astor drawing room. About 50 people mill about, the women in elaborate afternoon dresses, the men in frock coats. Servants circulate with champagne and tiny canapes. The room itself is a testament to old money taste. Elegant, but not showy. Expensive but not ostentatious, filled with antiques and artwork acquired over generations rather than bought en masse to fill a new mansion. "Mr. and Mrs. Van der Hughes," the butler announces, and heads turn. You feel the weight of dozens of gazes, some curious, some dismissive, some calculating. You're being assessed, categorized, judged. Are you still new money, or have you ascended to proper society? Is your railroad fortune now respectable, or still tainted by its recent acquisition? Are you worth cultivating as a connection, or better kept at arm's length? George, Constance, Caroline Astor herself approaches, a regal woman in her 60s dressed in dark purple silk. "How good of you to come." The formidable Mrs. Astor offers her hand, which you bow over slightly. She gives you an appraising look, as if checking whether you've developed any unfortunate habits since she last saw you. "Caroline, your home is as lovely as ever," Constance says with practiced ease. "Thank you, my dear." "George, I understand you've been expanding your interests in the Western Territories. John was just speaking of it with some gentlemen by the fireplace. Perhaps you'd care to join them? It's not really a request. You're being directed to the men's conversation, while the women have their own separate discussions. Gender segregation is alive and well in Gilded Age socializing. "Of course," you say, allowing yourself to be guided toward a group of men clustered near the marble fireplace. John Jacob Astor, with Caroline's son and heir to the Astor Fortunais holding court. Handsome, in his early 30s, impeccably dressed and mannered, he's the epitome of old money confidence. Around him are several other men of similar age and bearing, all with names you'd recognize from New York street signs and buildings. Vander Hughes, Asta greets you with a slight nod. We were just discussing the troubling situation at the mines. Dreadful business. Your pulse quickens. What troubling situation? The strikes mentioned in the morning paper? Some accident? The callous safety decision you discovered in your study? Indeed, you say, non-committally. These labour agitators are becoming a genuine concern, says another man you catch the name Livingston on his introduction. When workers start believing they deserve more than the market dictates, the entire economic system is threatened. My father always says that a man willing to work will always find fair compensation, adds another young scion sipping champagne. These strikers simply want something for nothing. They're waiting for you to agree, to join in this smug dismissal of workers literally dying for a living wage. This is a test. Do you think like them? Are you one of them? The situation is complex, you say carefully. Working conditions in many industries are genuinely dangerous. Perhaps addressing some legitimate concerns would reduce the appeal of labour organisers. The men stare at you like you've started speaking Chinese. My dear fellow, Asta says with a forced laugh, you sound positively progressive. Next you'll be suggesting we invite union representatives to Newport for the summer. The others chuckle. Crisis averted. They've decided you're making an awkward joke, not expressing a sincere opinion. Speaking of Newport, Asta continues, Mother tells me you finally acquired property there. Bellevue Avenue, isn't it? Another test. Bellevue Avenue is where the most prestigious summer cottages are located, mammoth mansions used only 8 weeks a year. Yes, construction is nearly complete, you say, hoping that's true. Splendid. Perhaps we'll see more of your charming daughter next season. Elizabeth, isn't it? Mother mentioned she's touring Europe currently. And there it is, the hint about your daughter. Asta is considering her as a potential match, a business transaction dressed up as romance, your nouveau riche money combined with his old family name, a classic Gilded Age alliance. Yes, she's in Paris at present, you say, again hoping it's true. She's quite taken with the Louvre. Excellent. A girl should be cultivated. My mother insists upon it. The conversation shifts to yachting, then horse racing, the acceptable pastimes of the leisure class. You navigate carefully, letting others talk more than you do, dropping vague comments that could mean anything. Meanwhile, across the room, you can see Constance engaged in what appears to be an intense conversation with Caroline Asta and several other women. Their faces are pleasant, their postures relaxed, but you can sense the social combat happening beneath the surface. After about an hour of this exhausting social performance, a subtle shift happens in the room. People begin to drift toward the entrance. The reception is ending precisely at 5 o'clock, of course. Caroline Asta would never commit the vulgarity of an event that drags on too long. As you and Constance retrieve your outer garments from servants, Caroline approaches once more. We're so looking forward to seeing your Newport home completed, she says. Perhaps you'll host a little gathering there once the season begins. Nothing elaborate, of course, just intimate friends. Translation, you've passed the test. You're being invited to host an event that Caroline Asta might actually attend, the ultimate social benediction. We'd be delighted, Constance replies, a hint of genuine pleasure breaking through her social mask. Caroline smiles thinly. Wonderful. Oh, and do bring Elizabeth. John mentioned how much he enjoyed their conversation at the opera last winter. With that parting shot, a clear signal that your daughter is being considered for the ultimate social elevation, Caroline moves on to the next, departing guests. In the carriage ride home, Constance practically vibrates with suppressed excitement. Did you hear? She as good as invited herself to Newport, and the way she mentioned Elizabeth and John George, do you realize what this means? I believe so, you say, watching the emotions play across her face. After all these years, she says, more to herself than to you. All the snubs, the closed doors, the whispers about new money and Western vulgarity. Finally, you see it clearly now, the driving force behind your wife's life, perhaps behind your entire marriage, social acceptance, the desperate need to be recognized as equals by people whose only claim to superiority is having gotten rich earlier than you did. It seems so petty, so meaningless compared to the life and death concerns of the workers in your mines and factories. But in the Gilded Age social hierarchy, this is survival of a different kind. Constance has been fighting a war with weapons of calling cards and dinner invitations, and she's finally glimpsing victory. "You don't seem as pleased as I expected," she says, studying your face. "I was just thinking about the cost," you reply truthfully. She misunderstands. "The Newport house, I know it's been dreadfully expensive, but surely it's worth it for what it will mean for Elizabeth's future. An Astor match. Even your father couldn't have dreamed so high. The real cost, you think but don't say, is much higher than dollars. It's the crushing of workers' lives to build fortunes. It's the corruption of government to protect those fortunes. It's the reduction of your daughter to a commercial transaction to be traded for social status." But in the gathering dusk of Fifth Avenue, as your carriage rolls past other limestone palaces just like yours, you keep these thoughts to yourself. You're learning that survival in the Gilded Age requires different masks for different situations: ruthless businessman, social climber, family patriarch. The carriage turns into your driveway, and servants appear to assist your descent. The massive doors of your mansion swing open, revealing the glittering interior lit by electric lights, another status symbol, as most homes still use gas. "I should rest before dinner," Constance says as you enter. "We're dining at Delmonico's with the governor tonight, remember? Another social obligation, another performance to give. The Gilded Age day is far from over." "Of course," you say. "I'll see you then." As Constance ascends the grand staircase, you're left alone in the entrance hall, surrounded by marble and mahogany and gold leaf, displays of wealth that cost so much yet somehow feel hollow. You're starting to understand that the true currency of the Gilded Age isn't just money, it's social position, influence, power, and the pursuit of these things consumes every waking hour of the elite. As you prepare for yet another social performance at dinner, you wonder if anyone in this glittering world is truly happy, or if they're all just trapped in golden cages of their own making. Dinner at Delmonico's with the governor turns out to be exactly what you'd expect from Gilded Age politics, an elaborate dance of influence, money, and power thinly disguised as a social occasion. The restaurant itself is a temple to excess. Located at the corner of 5th Avenue and 26th Street, Delmonico's is where the elite of New York dine when they wish to be seen. The moment you and Constance step through the doors, you're enveloped in a world of crystal chandeliers, thick carpets, and gilt-framed mirrors. The air smells of expensive cigars, French sauces, and money. Governor Flower, a portly man with impressive mutton chop whiskers, greets you with the practiced warmth of a career politician. Vander Hughes and the lovely Mrs. Vander Hughes, delighted, absolutely delighted. Around a private table in the back room, you meet the rest of your dinner companions, 2 state senators, a judge, and several businessmen who are clearly lobbyists. Their wives sit in a cluster at one end of the table while the men congregate at the other. The gender segregation is automatic, unquestioned. The conversation flows along with the Wiener Chateau Lafite that costs more per bottle than a factory worker makes in a month. As the turtle soup is served, you realise the true purpose of this dinner. A proposed bill affecting railroad taxation is coming up in the state legislature, and these men want to ensure it dies a quiet death. The problem, you see, drawls one of the senators between slurps of soup, is that the public has gotten this absurd notion that railroads should pay their fair share, as if the economic benefit of transportation wasn't contribution enough. Quite, agrees the judge, who apparently sees no conflict of interest in dining with men whose cases might come before his court. The rabble-rousers in the press stir them up with talk of fair taxation and public interest. Complete nonsense. The governor turns to you. Your thoughts, Vander Hughes. You have more track laid in this state than almost anyone. All eyes turn to you, waiting. This is clearly a moment where your Gilded Age self would be expected to voice strong opinions. But what would you say? I believe, you begin carefully, that we must balance the legitimate needs of business with the long-term stability of the state. Prosperity depends on both. The men stare at you blankly. That was apparently not the fire-breathing defence of corporate interests they expected. Governor Flower recovers first. Well said, well said. Balance, indeed, that's precisely why I'm considering a compromise bill, one that appears to increase taxation while providing generous exemptions for essential infrastructure investments. In other words, a bill designed to look like reform while actually preserving the status quo. Classic Gilded Age politics. I'd be happy to have my secretary draft some, suggested language for such exemptions you offer. Getting the hang of this game, the governor beams. Excellent, your expertise would be most valuable. As the dinner progresses through 7 more courses, each more elaborate than the last, you participate in what amounts to a conspiracy to defraud the public. The tax bill is just the beginning. There's a discussion of judicial appointments. We need men of reason on the bench. Railway commission staffing. Johnson's boy needs a position, and even a proposed amendment to the state constitution to protect business interests from short-sighted regulation. And through it all, money is never directly mentioned. No crude offers of cash for votes. The Gilded Age elite are too sophisticated for that. Instead, there are discussions of campaign donations, investment opportunities, board positions for relatives, and exclusive club memberships. The corruption is wrapped in layers of respectability, just as the rotten core of industrial capitalism is gilded with the appearance of prosperity. By the time dessert arrives, a towering confection of ice cream, spun sugar, and gold leaf, you've witnessed more corruption in one meal than most people see in a lifetime. And the most disturbing part? Everyone at the table, including your Gilded Age self, considers this perfectly normal. The evening finally ends around 10 o'clock. As you and Constance settle into your carriage for the ride home, she looks pleased. "That went well," she says. "The governor's wife invited us to their summer place in the Adirondacks. She rarely extends such invitations. Another social victory. You're climbing a ladder where each rung represents access to an ever more exclusive circle. And did you notice how respectfully the senator treated you?" she continues. "A far cry from 3 years ago when he refused to even acknowledge us at the opera. You make an appropriate noise of agreement, but your mind is elsewhere. The casual corruption of the dinner has left you unsettled. Is this what power looks like in the Gilded Age? Men in private rooms carving up the state to serve their interests while people starve in tenements a few blocks away? Back at your mansion, Richardson is waiting to help you change for the night. The ritual of undressing is nearly as elaborate as dressing, with each garment carefully removed, inspected, and handed off to specialized servants. As Richardson helps you into a silk dressing gown, he coughs discreetly. "Sir, There was a telegram while you were out. From Newport. He hands you a yellow piece of paper. The message is brief. Construction completed, stop furniture installed, stop staff hired, stop ready for inspection, stop. Your Newport cottage is apparently finished. The summer palace you've built to cement your social status among the elite. Also, sir, Richardson continues, your private car has been prepared for tomorrow's journey as requested. You hadn't known you were leaving tomorrow, but apparently your Gilded Age self had already made plans to visit Newport and inspect your new summer home. Thank you, Richardson. What time do we depart? 9 o'clock, sir. Mrs. Van der Hughes has chosen to remain in the city to oversee preparations for next week's dinner party. You'll be travelling alone. That simplifies things. You won't have to maintain your charade in front of Constance, at least for a day or two. Oh, very good. Good night, Richardson. Good night, sir. Left alone in your opulent bedroom, you find sleep elusive. The day's events swirl in your mind, the business conspiracy with Morgan and Carnegie, the social manoeuvring at the Astor reception, the political corruption at dinner. Is this what it means to be wealthy in the Gilded Age? Is this success? You drift off eventually, but your dreams are troubled by images of workers trapped in burning factories, of children labouring in coal mines, of families huddled in tenement rooms while you sleep under silk in a room bigger than their entire building. Morning comes too soon. You're awoken again by Richardson and his team of servants, the elaborate dressing ritual is performed, and by 8:30 you're in your carriage headed for Grand Central Depot. Your private rail car awaits, just as luxurious as yesterday, but configured differently. The dining table has been removed and the seating arranged for daytime travel. A desk has been set up with papers neatly stacked. Apparently you're expected to work during the 5-hour journey to Newport. The porter greets you with a bow. Good morning, Mr. Van der Hughes. We'll be departing momentarily. Cook has prepared breakfast whenever you're ready, and I've laid out the morning papers. As the train pulls out of the station, you settle into a leather armchair and examine the pile of newspapers. The headlines are a window into the Gilded Age. Steel strike continues, violence reported, tenement fire kills 23 in Lower East Side. President Cleveland denies tariff changes. Mrs. Astor's reception draws society elite. That last one catches your eye. You scan the article and find your name listed among the attendees, with a special mention of your intimate conversation with John Jacob Astor IV and speculation about a possible match between the Astor and Van der Hughes families. Society gossip, it seems, is serious news in the Gilded Age. The porter appears with breakfast eggs, steak, toast, pastries, fresh fruit, in February a luxury, coffee and a glass of champagne. Apparently morning drinking is still very much a thing for the upper classes. Will you be requiring anything else, sir? He asks. No, thank you, you reply, still uncomfortable with being waited on hand and foot. Very good, sir. I'll be in the service compartment if needed. Left alone with your feast and your thoughts, you stare out the window as New York gives way to Connecticut countryside. The landscape is industrial near the cities, factories belching smoke, tenements crowded against railroad tracks, workers trudging through snow to morning shifts. But as you travel further, the scene shifts to frozen rivers, snow-covered forests, and occasional grand estates set back from the tracks. The journey passes in a blur of paperwork, which you mostly pretend to read, meals, each more elaborate than the last, and scenery. By mid-afternoon, your train is pulling into Newport, Rhode Island, summer playground of America's elite, even in the dead of winter. A carriage waits at the station, your carriage apparently, with your monogram on the door. The driver greets you by name. To Breakwater Hall, sir? He asks. You nod assuming that must be the name of your Newport estate. These people name their houses like royal palaces. As the carriage rolls through Newport, you get your first glimpse of the famous resort town in winter. Most of the massive cottages, a laughable understatement, are closed for the season, their windows shuttered, their grounds empty. Only a few show signs of life, probably the year-round homes of local gentry rather than the summer palaces of New York millionaires. The carriage turns onto Bellevue Avenue, the most prestigious address in Newport, and there, rising on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, is your summer home. Holy shit, you mutter under your breath. Magnificent, isn't it, sir? The driver says proudly, mistaking your shock for pleasure. Finest house on the avenue, they're saying. Breakwater Hall is not a house. It's not even a mansion. It's a limestone chateau that would make French aristocrats jealous. 5 stories of pale stone and slate roofs with turrets, balconies and enough windows to keep a glazier employed for years. The front facade must be 200 feet wide, with a circular drive leading to a massive entrance portico, supported by marble columns. The scale is mind-boggling. This isn't a home, it's a statement, a declaration that you have so much money you can build a palace you'll use 8 weeks a year and leave empty the rest of the time. As your carriage approaches, you notice something else, a small army of servants lined up on the front steps. At least 30 people in formal uniform standing at attention in the February cold, waiting to greet their master. They've been practicing all week for your arrival, sir, the driver informs you. The new butler's quite strict, I hear, practicing, like actors in a play, which is exactly what this Eastern elaborate performance of wealth and power, with you as both star and audience. The carriage stops at the bottom of the marble steps. A man in his 50s, dressed in immaculate black, steps forward and opens your door with a white-gloved hand. "Welcome to Breakwater Hall, sir," he says with a slight English accent. "I am Hargrove, your butler." Of course he's English. In the status-obsessed Gilded Age, an English butler is the ultimate household accessory. "Thank you, Hargrove," you reply, stepping down. The butler gestures to the assembled staff. "The household staff is assembled for your inspection, sir. 38 in total, not including the groundskeepers and stable hands." 38 people to maintain a house you'll barely use. The waste is staggering. "Very good," you say, not knowing what else to say. Hargrove leads you up the steps, past the rows of bowing and curtsying servants. You nod to them, trying to acknowledge their humanity in a small way, which earns you a curious glance from the butler. Apparently, the real Vander Hughes doesn't bother with such niceties. The entrance hall of Breakwater Hall makes your New York mansion look modest. Soaring ceilings with painted murals, a double staircase of marble sweeping up to a gallery, priceless tapestries and paintings covering walls panelled in rare woods, crystal chandeliers hanging from gilded chains. Every surface that could be decorated is decorated, every material the finest available, every object designed to scream of wealth and status. "Would you care for refreshment, sir, or would you prefer to inspect the house first?" Hargrove asks. "The house, I think," you reply, curious to see just how far this excess goes. What follows is a tour that would exhaust a marathon runner. Breakwater Hall has 97 rooms, Hargrove informs you proudly. There are 30 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom, unheard of luxury in an era when indoor plumbing is still relatively new. There are drawing rooms, morning rooms, music rooms, smoking rooms, billiard rooms, a library, a conservatory, and a ballroom that could host 200 people comfortably. Every room is furnished in a different historical style. The main drawing room is Louis XV, all gilded wood and silk upholstery. The library is Tudor, with dark oak panelling and leather-bound books. The music room is Venetian, with hand-painted furniture and mirrors everywhere. The effect is dizzying, a museum of expensive reproductions rather than a cohesive home. The previous record for construction was 2 years, held by the Vanderbilt cottage, Hargrove informs you as you tour the second floor. Breakwater Hall was completed in 18 months at your insistence, rush building a palace to one-up the Vanderbilts. The competitiveness of the Gilded Age elite knows no bounds. The tour continues to the servants' quarters, tucked away in the back of the house and up narrow staircases. Here, the luxury abruptly ends. The rooms are small, plain, and functional. Multiple servants share bedrooms. Their bathrooms are basic at best. The contrast with the family's accommodations is stark. The staff dining hall, Hargrove says, showing you a long room with simple wooden tables and benches. 3 meals are served daily with separate sittings for senior and junior staff. Even among servants, there's a rigid hierarchy. The kitchen is massive, designed to prepare banquets for hundreds and staffed by a French chef and 6 assistants. The wine cellar holds thousands of bottles. The silver vault contains enough flatware and serving pieces to supply a small hotel. The linen room is stacked with monogrammed sheets and tablecloths. By the time you reach the basement to inspect the coal furnaces and electric generators, Breakwater Hall has its own power plant, a rarity in 1895. Your head is spinning with the scale of excess. "Is everything satisfactory, sir?" Hargrove asks as you return to the main floor. You nod, unable to find words that won't betray your shock. This isn't a home, it's a monument to ego and competitive consumption, a building designed not for comfort or beauty, but to announce to the world that you have more money than taste. Tea will be served in the morning room, Hargrove continues, and then perhaps you would like to rest before dinner. Chef has prepared a special menu for your first night at Breakwater Hall. "Yes, that sounds fine," you say, following him to yet another overly decorated room where a maid in starched uniform is setting out a silver tea service. Left alone with your tea, you have a moment to absorb the absurdity of your situation. You're the sole occupant of a 97-room palace, with a staff of 40 people whose only purpose is to serve your needs. The waste of resources, human, financial, materialists, almost physically painful to contemplate. But this is success in the Gilded Age. This is what men like Morgan, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, and apparently you strive for. Not just wealth, but conspicuous consumption. Not just power, but visible dominance. Houses like Breakwater Hall aren't built for comfort. They're built as competitive displays, stages for social combat. As you sip tea from a Sèvres porcelain cup that costs more than a coal miner makes in a year, you wonder, how did America arrive at this point? How did we create a society where such extreme inequality isn't just tolerated but celebrated, where men are admired for building palaces, while children work 14-hour days in their factories? Through the tall windows, you can see the Atlantic Ocean crashing against the cliffs below your property. The view is spectacular, the kind people travel thousands of miles to experience. But you'll enjoy it for a few weeks in summer, then leave it empty, because that's what people of your class do. They buy beauty and then ignore it. A soft knock at the door interrupts your thoughts. A footman enters with a silver tray bearing a telegram. "This just arrived for you, sir." The yellow paper bears a brief message. "Trouble at Pittsburgh Mill. Stop workers threatening general strike. Stop Pinkerton agents standing by. Stop. Await your orders. Stop. More labor unrest. More desperate workers demanding basic rights. More private police ready to crack skulls in defense of your profits." This is the dark side of Gilded Age success, the foundation of violence and exploitation on which these palaces are built. Every crystal chandelier in Breakwater Hall was paid for by the sweat and blood of workers who will never see the inside of this house, except perhaps as servants. You crumple the telegram, unsure how to respond. Your modern sensibilities recoil at the thought of setting armed thugs on striking workers. But in this world, in this role, what are your alternatives? As the winter sun sets over the Atlantic, casting long shadows through the ornate windows of your summer palace, you face the fundamental moral question of the Gilded Age. Is any of this worth the human cost? Hargrove appears at precisely 6 o'clock to announce that dinner is served. Another elaborate ritual begins a 7-course meal prepared by 6 people, served by 4 for you alone at a table that seats 24. The absurdity would be comical if it weren't so obscene. "Will there be anything else, sir?" Hargrove asks as the dessert plates are cleared. You look around at the massive, empty dining room, at the army of servants hovering attentively, at the wealth on display in every piece of furniture and tableware. "No," you say quietly, "that will be all." Left alone, you wander through the silent, echoing halls of Breakwater Hall. In the dim light of evening, with most of the rooms dark and empty, the house feels less like a home and more like a mausoleum, a monument to an ego that needed this much space, this much luxury, this much excess to feel satisfied. And yet, was the real Vander Hughes ever satisfied? Or was he always looking to the next acquisition, the next expansion, the next social conquest? In your bedroom, a cavernous space with a 4-poster bed that could sleep 6 comfortably, you find Richardson waiting to help you undress. The ritual of preparing for bed is performed in silence. When he's finally gone, you lie awake under silk sheets and a fur coverlet, staring at the painted ceiling depicting Greek gods frolicking in the clouds. Outside, the winter wind howls off the Atlantic, rattling the hundreds of windows of Breakwater Hall. Somewhere in the vast house, a door slams. The sound echoes through empty corridors and vacant rooms, a lonely reminder of the hollowness at the heart of Gilded Age success. You've spent a day living as one of the richest men in America, in one of the most ostentatious homes ever built. And all you feel is empty. Morning at Breakwater Hall brings a new level of Gilded Age absurdity. You wake to find not 1 but 3 valets waiting to assist you, Richardson, who travelled with you from New York, plus 2 Newport staff members who apparently exist solely to help with your seaside wardrobe. "We've laid out the morning options, sir," Richardson says, gesturing to 3 complete outfits displayed on standing forms. The blue serge for a walk on the grounds, the tweed for town visits, or the grey worsted if you plan to receive callers. You stare at the clothes, then at the 3 grown men whose entire morning revolves around which fabric you want touching your skin today. "The blue," you say, if only to end this bizarre ritual quickly. Apparently, even that simple choice triggers an elaborate protocol. The Newport valets carefully remove the chosen outfit from its form while Richardson runs your bath. The temperature is tested with a thermometer to ensure it's precisely to your liking. Rose petals are strewn across the surface because apparently even bathing requires floral garnish in the Gilded Age. As you soak in water hot enough to poach an egg, a luxury requiring someone to haul and heat gallons of water, you hear a knock at the bathroom door. "Enter," you call, still uncomfortable with being seen naked, but realizing privacy simply isn't a concept that applies to the ultra-wealthy in this era. A footman appears with a silver tray bearing tea, toast, and the morning papers, because waiting until you're dressed for breakfast would be too plebeian. "The New York papers arrived on the early train, sir," he says, setting up a small table beside the tub, and Mr. Hargrove asks if you plan to use the house for entertaining this summer, as several local merchants are requesting appointments to discuss provisions. Planning a summer social calendar in February. The Gilded Age elite schedule their spontaneity months in advance. "Tell him I'll discuss it after breakfast," you reply, reaching for the tea with dripping hands. Very good, sir. Left alone with the newspapers, you scan the headlines. The labor troubles at your Pittsburgh mill have escalated. The article describes agitators demanding outrageous concessions like a 10-hour workday down from 12, 1 day off per week, and safety equipment. The writer's tone makes clear these are considered radical, unreasonable demands. More troubling is a small item on page 3. Child killed in mill accident. A 12-year-old boy working as a sweeper in your Pittsburgh steel mill caught his arm in an unguarded gear and was pulled into the machinery, dead before the foreman could even shut down the line. The article notes that operations resumed within the hour. You feel physically ill. A child died in your factory and production barely paused. Is this the price of Breakwater Hall, of your private rail car and French chef and wardrobe of handmade suits? The 3 valets return before you can sink too deeply into these dark thoughts. The bathing ritual concludes, the dressing ceremony begins, and 45 minutes later, you're finally prepared to face the dire day in which you have absolutely nothing required of you except existing in luxury. Breakfast is served in a glass-walled conservatory overlooking the Atlantic. The February sun sparkles on waves crashing against the cliffs below. Inside, surrounded by exotic plants shipped from warmer climates at astronomical expense, you dine on food imported from across the country and around the world: Florida oranges, hothouse strawberries, Virginia ham, English muffins, Brazilian coffee. Hargrove hovers nearby, directing the small army of servants silently attending your every need. He approaches when you've finished your coffee. "Regarding the summer entertaining, sir," he begins, "the staff have prepared several proposed calendars for your consideration." He presents a leather portfolio containing meticulously hand-drawn schedules with different scenarios: a moderate season of 5 major events, a more ambitious season of 8 events, or a social blitz of 12 events that would have Breakwater Hall occupied almost continuously from June through September. "Mrs. Astor has already made inquiries about your plans," Hargrove adds, "as have the Vanderbilts and Ulrichses." The social competition never ends. Even in the dead of winter, the jockeying for summer status is well underway. And there is the matter of the sailing regatta, Hargrove continues. "The committee is hoping you'll host the opening reception, as your property has the best view of the starting line." You nod, trying to look like this matters to you. The moderate schedule seems most reasonable, and yes to the regatta reception. "Very good, sir. Oh, and chef inquires about your preferences for tonight's dinner party." You blink in surprise. "Dinner party?" Hargrove's expression remains neutral, but you sense his concern at your apparent memory lapse. "Yes, sir. You telegraphed ahead to arrange an intimate gathering of local year-round residents. The invitations were sent out last week. 8 guests are expected at 7 o'clock. A dinner party you apparently planned but have no recollection of because it was arranged by the real Vander Hughes before you mysteriously took over his life. Wonderful. "Ah, yes," you say, trying to cover. "Who have we invited?" Hargrove produces a list. "The names mean nothing to you, but the titles are impressive: a retired admiral, a wealthy widow, the president of Newport's oldest bank, a minor European aristocrat wintering in America, and several other members of the local upper crust." "And the entertainment, sir? Will you still require the string quartet and the unusual performance you specified?" The slight hesitation in Hargrove's voice makes you wonder just what kind of unusual performance your Gilded Age self had planned. "Remind me of the details," you say carefully. "The contortionists, sir, from the Barnum Circus, and the electrical demonstration." What the hell were you planning? Some bizarre circus act combined with dangerous early electrical experiments? The Gilded Age rich really didn't know what to do with their money. "Let's cancel those," you say firmly. "Just the quartet will be fine." Hargrove looks relieved. Very good, sir. Chef suggests the 12-course French menu with the beluga caviar to start and the stuffed peacock as the centerpiece. The ice sculptures have already been commissioned. 12 courses, stuffed peacock, ice sculptures for an intimate dinner of 9 people. That sounds adequate, you say, wondering how many people could be fed for a month on what you'll spend on a single meal. Will there be anything else, sir? You glance around the conservatory, at the army of servants standing at attention, at the half-eaten food that will be thrown away, at the tropical plants that will die as soon as the weather turns cold. No, that will be all. The day passes in a haze of pointless luxury. You tour the grounds with the head gardener, who explains the elaborate plans for summer landscaping, entire gardens of flowers that will bloom for a few weeks during your brief residence, then be replanted with new varieties as the season progresses. You inspect the stables, where 12 horses are maintained year-round despite your absence. You visit the boathouse, where 3 yachts wait under canvas covers, each worth a fortune, each used perhaps a dozen times a year. Everywhere you go, servants materialize to attend to your needs, then disappear when not needed. It's like living in a luxury hotel with a staff-to-guest ratio of 40-1. By late afternoon, preparations for the dinner party are in full swing. Florists arrive with massive arrangements of hothouse blooms. The string quartet sets up in the music room. Silver is polished, crystal is arranged, linens are pressed. The kitchen is a madhouse of activity as chef and his staff prepare a meal that would feed a small village. You retreat to your bedroom to dress for dinner, another elaborate ritual requiring 3 grown men to help you put on clothes. This time, it's white tie and tails, the most formal evening attire. By the time Richardson pins a tiny diamond stick pin to your white tie, you feel like a Christmas tree being decorated. "Perfect, sir," he says, stepping back to admire his work. "Shall I send word to Hargrove that you'll be down shortly?" "Yes, thank you." Left alone, you examine yourself in the full-length mirror. The man who stares back is the perfect image of Gilded Age, success immaculately groomed, expensively dressed, radiating wealth and power. On the outside, you are the very model of what men of this era aspire to be. But inside, you're increasingly troubled by the moral cost of this lifestyle. The dead child in your factory, the striking workers facing armed Pinkertons, the obscene waste of resources that could help so many but instead are squandered on peacock dinners and ice sculptures. A soft knock at the door announces that it's time. You descend the grand staircase to find Hargrove waiting in the entrance hall, now transformed with flowers, candles, and polished silver. "Your guests will begin arriving momentarily, sir," he says. "Shall I have champagne served immediately, or would you prefer to wait until all have arrived?" "Immediately," you reply, figuring these people probably expect alcohol the moment they cross the threshold. You're right. The first guests, Admiral Winslow and his wife, are barely through the door before footmen appear with silver trays of champagne in crystal flutes. The Admiral, a red-faced man with an impressive white beard, takes one in each hand. "Vander Hughes," he booms. "Magnificent place you've built, puts the rest of the avenue to shame." His wife, a thin woman dripping with diamonds despite the intimate nature of the dinner, adds, "We've been watching the construction with great interest. The limestone quarried from your own property in Vermont, I understand. So clever to use one's own resources." You make non-committal noises of agreement as more guests arrive. Each exclaims over the house, the furnishings, the artwork. The conversation is a bizarre mix of flattery directed at you and subtle digs at other members of Newport society who aren't present. "The Vanderbilt's new place is so continental," says Mrs. Winthrop, the wealthy widow, with a sniff that makes clear this isn't a compliment. "One hardly feels one is in America at all." And the Astor's summer ball last year, adds Count von Hohenberg, the European aristocrat, was charming, of course, but perhaps trying a bit too hard. The live swans in the fountain seemed excessive, says the man currently drinking champagne in a 97-room cottage with 40 servants. The string quartet plays softly in the background as you lead your guests on a tour of the public rooms. They ooh and ah over the imported marble, the gilded ceilings, the priceless artwork. Their compliments are genuine, but also calculating. They're mentally tallying the cost of everything, comparing it to their own possessions, determining your exact place in the social hierarchy. "I must say," says Mrs. Cabot, wife of the bank president, "your picture gallery surpasses even the Vanderbilts. Such taste. The library is extraordinary," her husband adds. 10,000 volumes, Hargrove tells me. "Have you read them all?" He laughs as if this is the height of wit. "Only the important ones," you reply dryly. Finally, dinner is announced. Hargrove leads the procession to the dining room, now transformed into a scene from a royal palace. The table gleams with silver, crystal, and gold-rimmed china. Candelabras cast a warm glow over elaborate floral arrangements. In the centre, a massive ice sculpture of Neptune rising from the sea slowly melts onto a silver tray. The meal that follows is less a dinner and more a theatrical performance with food as props, 12 courses, each more elaborate than the last. Caviar served on ice blocks illuminated from below by hidden electric lights. Turtle soup poured from silver tureens. Whole fish baked in salt crusts that servers dramatically crack open tableside. The stuffed peacock, its plumage carefully reattached after cooking, looking as if it might fly off the platter. Between courses, servants silently replace every piece of flatware, every plate, every glass. The choreography is precise, practiced, perfect. You count 28 different serving vessels used for 9 people over 3 hours. The conversation flows as freely as the wind, a different vintage with each course. Your guests discuss yacht racing, horse breeding, European travel, and real estate. They gossip about absent friends and subtly boast about their own achievements and possessions. Not once do they mention business, politics, or anything resembling current events or social issues. It's as if the world outside Newport doesn't exist. No labour strikes, no tenement fires, no child workers, no corruption, just wealthy people in a bubble of privilege talking about the things that matter to them, which turn out to be almost entirely trivial. "I hear the Whitneys have commissioned a solid gold dinner service," says Mrs. Winthrop. "Seems impractical, don't you think? Gold is so soft." "The Morgans have hired a French chef away from the Rothschilds," adds Mrs. Cabot. "Paying him the earth, I understand, though I doubt he'll last the season. Americans are too direct for the French temperament." And on it goes, a stream of inconsequential chatter, punctuated by the arrival of increasingly elaborate food that no one seems particularly interested in eating. Most plates return to the kitchen barely touched. The meal is about display, not nourishment. By the time dessert arrives, an architectural wonder of spun, sugar and sorbet, you're exhausted by the performance of it all. Every smile, every compliment, every gesture in this world is calculated. Nothing is genuine, everything is competition. After dinner, the men retreat to the smoking room for brandy and cigars, while the women gather in the drawing room for cordials. Another Gilded Age ritual of gender segregation. In the masculine confines of the smoking room, surrounded by dark wood panelling and leather chairs, the conversation shifts slightly. Now that the women are gone, the men discuss their latest acquisitions with the frankness of collectors comparing trophies. "Just bought a Rembrandt," says Cabot, puffing on a cigar that costs more than a factory worker makes in a day. "Small piece, nothing major, but authentic. 40,000. Or solid investment, nods the Admiral. Art always appreciates. Better than these new automobile contraptions Harrison is so keen on. Noisy, unreliable things. Speaking of investments, Count von Hohenberg says, turning to you, I understand you've been acquiring additional rail lines in the West, planning to connect to the Southern Pacific. A business question exactly what you've been dreading. You keep your answer vague. I never discuss specific business strategies at dinner parties. Bad form. The men nod approvingly. In their world, work is something gentlemen own but don't discuss in social settings. Money is to be spent, not earned, at least conversationally. After an appropriate interval, you rejoin the ladies for coffee and petit fours in the music room, where the string quartet plays selections from Strauss and Tchaikovsky. The evening winds down with polite compliments and promises to reciprocate the invitation soon. By 11 o'clock, the last guest has departed. You stand in the entrance hall as Hargrove closes the massive front door. "A successful evening, sir," he says. "The guests were most impressed." You look around at the wreckage of the party, wilting flowers, melted ice sculptures, dozens of servants already cleaning up the excessive waste of it all. For what? To impress 8 people who will host their own excessive dinners next week to impress you back? "Is this what we do, Hargrove?" you ask, the question slipping out before you can stop it. "Spend fortunes to impress people we don't even particularly like?" The butler's face remains professionally neutral, but his eyes register surprise at this philosophical turn. "I couldn't say, sir. I'm merely here to ensure it's done properly." "Of course," you sigh. "Good night, Hargrove." "Good night, sir." You climb the grand staircase alone, passing priceless artwork that no one really sees, walking on carpets imported from Persia that will be replaced when they go out of fashion. At the top, you pause and look back at the entrance hall, now dark except for a few strategically placed lamps to guide late-night wanderers. In the dim light, Breakwater Hall feels even more like a museum than a homia carefully curated collection of expensive objects arranged to impress visitors rather than bring joy to inhabitants, a monument to conspicuous consumption that sits empty most of the year. Is this success? Is this happiness? The questions follow you to your cavernous bedroom where Richardson waits to help you undress. The evening's performance isn't over yet. There's still the ritual of preparing for bed, removing each piece of evening wear, washing, donning silk pajamas, having your robe and slippers placed just so for the morning. When Richardson finally withdraws, you're left alone in a bedroom bigger than most people's entire homes. Outside, the Atlantic crashes against the cliffs, a constant reminder of the real world that exists beyond these gilded walls. You think of the dead child in your factory, of the workers facing armed Pinkertons, of the families in tenements while you maintain a 97-room cottage for 8 weeks of use per year. As you drift off to sleep under silk sheets and fur coverlets, you wonder if any amount of luxury is worth the moral cost of how it's obtained in the Gilded Age. Sleep doesn't come easily in Breakwater Hall. The wind off the Atlantic rattles the 100-plus windows, creating an eerie symphony of draughts and creaks. The massive bed, for all its silk sheets and down pillows, feels empty and cold. And somewhere in the vast mansion, a clock chimes the hours with relentless precision, marking time in a way that feels almost accusatory. You wake around 2 in the morning, shivering despite the fur coverlets. The fire in the bedroom fireplace has died down to embers, casting just enough light to make the shadows more menacing. In your modern life, you'd simply adjust the thermostat. In 1895, you'd have to ring for a servant to rebuild the fire. The thought of waking someone to perform this menial task in the middle of the night feels wrong, so you wrap yourself in a velvet dressing gown left conveniently on a nearby chair and move to the window. Outside, the winter moon casts a silver path across the black Atlantic. The view is spectacular, but the glass is cold against your fingertips, a reminder that even unlimited wealth can't fully insulate you from the elements. A soft knock at the door startles you. "Yes?" you call, wondering who else is awake at this hour. The door opens to reveal an elderly man in a simple dark suit. Not one of your valets or footmen, but someone you haven't seen before. "Forgive the intrusion, sir," he says in a Scottish accent. "I noticed your light under the door during my rounds. Are you unwell?" "Who are you?" you ask, realizing how little you know about the small army of people who maintain your lifestyle. "Dr. Macpherson, sir, your household physician." Of course you have a live-in doctor. Why wouldn't you? "I'm fine," you say, "just having trouble sleeping." The doctor nods knowingly. The sea air takes some adjustment. "Perhaps a sleeping draught would help? I have my bag with me." Before you can respond, he's already opening a worn leather medical bag and removing a small blue bottle. "Just a few drops in water," he says, measuring the liquid with practiced precision. "This will ensure restful sleep without the morning haziness of laudanum or chloral." You accept the glass, but hesitate before drinking. "What is it exactly?" Macpherson looks mildly surprised at your question, as if patients don't normally inquire about what they're putting in their bodies. "A bromide compound with a touch of valerian. Quite safe, I assure you. I've been prescribing it for your digestive attacks for years." Digestive attacks? Apparently your Gilded Age body has health issues the original owner hasn't shared with you. "Is that something I should be concerned about?" you ask cautiously. The doctor studies your face. "Your stomach complaints have been well managed with diet and medication, sir, though I've repeatedly suggested that reducing your business pressures would provide more relief than any medicine. In other words, your Gilded Age self suffers from stress-induced stomach problems. Not surprising, given the moral compromises and cutthroat business decisions you've witnessed in just a couple of days. "And my general health otherwise?" You probe, curious about what medical issues might be lurking in this 1895 body. Macpherson's professional demeanour cracks slightly, revealing genuine concern. "If I may speak frankly, sir?" You nod. "You drive yourself too hard. Your heart palpitations last autumn were a warning. Men in your position, men of great wealth and responsibility, often fail to recognize the physical toll of their ambitions until it's too late. Heart palpitations, great." "You've seen this before?" you ask. "Too often," the doctor says grimly. "Mr. Morgan suffers from nervous exhaustion. Mr. Carnegie battles insomnia. Mr. Vanderbilt's digestive system is so compromised he can barely eat solid food. And Mr. Gould worked himself into an early grave." J. Gould, the notorious railroad magnate and speculator, had died in 1892 at just 56. A sobering reminder that all the money in the world can't buy health or time. The human body was not designed for the pressures of modern business, Macpherson continues. The telegraphs, the telephones, the constant demands, they take a toll that even the best medical science cannot fully address. It's ironic. These men who seem all-powerful, who control industries and shape nations, are ultimately just fragile humans breaking down under pressures they themselves have created. "What do you recommend?" you ask, genuinely curious about Gilded Age medical advice. "Moderation in all things," the doctor says, sounding like Hippocrates rather than a modern physician. "More rest, less rich food, fewer business entanglements, perhaps a sea voyage purely for pleasure, not business. Simple advice that the wealthy rarely follow." "And this current insomnia?" you ask, gesturing to the glass still in your hand. A symptom of an overactive mind. The draft will help tonight, but addressing the underlying causes would be wiser in the long term. You down the medicine, which tastes bitter despite an attempt to mask it with sugar. Thank you, doctor. I'll check on you in the morning, McPherson says, packing up his bag. Ring if you need anything further. When he's gone, you return to the window, waiting for the draft to take effect. The doctor's warnings echo in your mind. Heart palpitations, digestive problems, nervous exhaustion, the physical price of Gilded Age success. And it's not just physical health at stake in this era. In a time before antibiotics, before modern surgery, before many vaccines, illness that would be treatable in your time can be a death sentence in 1895. Appendicitis, pneumonia, infected wounds, all potentially fatal. Even childbirth remains perilous for women of all social classes. Money provides some insulation, private doctors, cleaner living conditions, better food, but the rich are not immune. President Cleveland had secretly undergone cancer surgery on a yacht just 2 years earlier to hide his condition from the public and prevent financial panic. Even the powerful cannot escape the limitations of medical science in this era. A wave of drowsiness washes over you as the sleeping draft takes effect. You make your way back to the massive bed, your limbs growing heavy. As you slide between the silk sheets, you wonder about the nameless workers in your factories and mines. If you, with all your wealth and a personal physician, face health challenges, what must their lives be like? No doctor making midnight house calls for them, no expensive medications. No options when injury or illness strikes except to hope for recovery or face destitution. The thought follows you into uneasy dreams. Morning brings an unexpected telegram. Return to New York immediately. Stop situation at mill critical. Stop violence reported. Stop. The labor unrest has escalated. As you hurriedly dress for the journey, the 3 valets now working with brisk efficiency rather than ceremonial slowness. Richardson fills you in on what he's learned from the morning papers. Workers at the Pittsburgh mill attempted to prevent replacement workers from entering, he explains as he fastens your cufflinks. The Pinkertons opened fire. 3 dead, dozens wounded. The governor is considering calling in the state militia. 3 people dead over working conditions and wages. 3 families destroyed because they dared ask for basic safety measures and living wages. And your Gilded Age self-heir, ultimately responsible. The private car is being prepared, Richardson continues. We can be at the station within the hour. You nod, your mind racing. What would the real Vanderhughes do in this situation? What will you do? As your carriage speeds toward the Newport station, you pass a cemetery where a funeral is in progress. Even from a distance, you can see it's an elaborate affair, gleaming black carriages with plumed horses, mourners in expensive black clothing, a massive casket being carried by uniformed pallbearers. Death spares neither rich nor poor in the Gilded Age, but even in death the class distinctions remain stark. The wealthy get marble mausoleums and elaborate ceremonies, the poor get unmarked graves in potters' fields. The 3 workers killed at your mill probably won't even get proper funerals, their families can't afford them. At the station your private car awaits, coupled to a waiting train. The porter greets you with a bow. We're prepared for immediate departure, sir. The telegraph operator has arranged priority clearance for the journey to New York. Inside, your private palace on wheels has been reconfigured for business travel. A desk has been set up with neat stacks of papers. Maps of Pittsburgh and its surroundings are pinned to a board. Several telegrams await your attention. As the train pulls out of Newport, you sift through the paperwork, trying to understand the full situation. The strike began over safety conditions specifically, the lack of guards on the machinery that killed that 12-year-old boy. When management refused to discuss changes, workers walked out. The company, under your name, brought in Pinkerton agents to protect replacement workers being bussed in from other cities. Violence erupted when striking workers tried to block the factory gates. It's a sadly familiar pattern in the Gilded Age workers, desperate enough to risk their lives for basic safety, companies willing to spill blood to avoid cutting into profits. One telegram catches your eye. It's from your son, currently at boarding school. Father, stop newspapers, reporting trouble at mill. Stop, are you well? Stop, Edward. Your son Edward is aware enough of world events to be concerned about the situation, a small humanizing detail in this otherwise cold business affair. You draft a quick response. All well, stop, situation being addressed. Stop, will visit soon. Stop, father. A promise you have no idea if you can keep, but it feels important to offer some reassurance. The journey back to New York passes in a blur of telegrams, reports, and growing anxiety. By the time your train pulls into Grand Central, you've made a decision. You may be trapped in this Gilded Age life temporarily, but you don't have to perpetuate its worst aspects. Your carriage takes you directly to your Fifth Avenue mansion, where Constance is waiting in the entrance hall, her face tight with worry. "George, thank goodness you've returned," she says, allowing herself a brief touch of your arm about as much public affection as is permitted in upper-class marriages of this era. The newspapers are calling it a massacre. The governor has telegraphed twice. "I need to go to Pittsburgh," you say, the decision crystallizing as you speak it. Constance looks shocked. "Pittsburgh? But surely your managers can handle the situation. It's not appropriate for you to personally involve yourself in such unpleasantness." In her world, a man of your stature simply doesn't acknowledge labor problems directly. That's what middle managers and Pinkertons are for, to create distance between you and the messy realities of how your wealth is generated. "Nevertheless," you say firmly, "I'm going tonight." Before she can object further, a butler approaches with a silver tray bearing a calling card. "Dr. Haverford has arrived for your appointment, sir." You'd forgotten. Apparently the real Vander Hughes had scheduled a doctor's visit for his return to New York. Not Dr. McPherson from Newport, but a different physician entirely. "Show him to my study," you say, grateful for the interruption. Dr. Haverford is everything Dr. McPherson is not young, fashionably dressed with a certain sycophantic manner that suggests he sees treating the wealthy as a path to social advancement. "Mr. Vander Hughes," he says with an obsequious smile, "I've brought the latest European treatment we discussed. Quite revolutionary." He opens his medical bag and removes a device that looks like something from a steampunk nightmare brass, glass tubes, and a small electrical battery. "The electrotherapeutic stimulator," he announces proudly. "Just 30 minutes each day will stimulate the digestive organs, improve circulation, and revitalize the nervous system. The Crown Prince of Austria swears by it." You stare at the contraption, which would probably do more harm than good. This is the state of medical science for even the wealthiest Americans in 1895, a mix of emerging scientific understanding and outright quackery. The rich can afford the latest treatments, but latest doesn't necessarily mean effective in this era. "Perhaps another time," you say diplomatically. "I'm preparing for an urgent journey." The doctor looks disappointed, but quickly rallies. Of course. Then perhaps you'll allow me to provide a travel kit. I've prepared digestive powders, sleeping draughts, and my special heart tonic." You accept the kit mostly to hasten his departure. Once he's gone, you return to the task at hand, preparing for Pittsburgh. Richardson appears as if summoned by your thoughts. "Shall I pack for an extended stay, sir?" "Yes, and arrange for the private car to be ready tonight." "Oh, very good, sir." He hesitates. If I may, sir, your presence in Pittsburgh during labor unrest may be inadvisable. There have been incidents of violence against factory owners in similar situations. He's warning you that you might be in physical danger, a legitimate concern in an era when labor conflicts sometimes escalate to bombs and assassinations. I'll take that risk, you say. Richardson nods, his expression neutral, but his eyes showing a hint of surprise and perhaps respect. As you wish, sir. As evening falls, you find yourself once again in your private rail car, this time headed west toward Pittsburgh and an uncertain confrontation. The luxury surroundings now feel grotesque against the backdrop of dead workers and broken families. You've spent the afternoon drafting a new policy for the Pittsburgh mill: shorter hours, slightly higher wages, basic safety equipment, no child workers under 14. It's modest by modern standards, but revolutionary for 1895. Your secretary nearly fainted when you dictated it to him. Sir, he had protested, these concessions will reduce profits by nearly 8%. I'm aware, you'd replied calmly. Prepare the documents anyway. Now, as your train speeds through the darkness toward Pittsburgh, you stand at the window watching America roll past. Small towns with warm lights in windows, farmhouses isolated in vast fields, and occasionally the hellish glow of factories working through the night, their chimneys belching smoke into the sky. This is the real America of the Gilded Agenot, the mansions of Newport or the ballrooms of New York, but these factories where the actual wealth is created not by the Morgans and Carnegies and Vander Hugheses of the world, but by millions of anonymous workers who will never set foot in a private rail car. A knock at the door interrupts your thoughts. The porter enters with a telegram that's just been passed to the train. Message from Pittsburgh, sir. The yellow paper bears grim news. Situation deteriorating. Stop militia deployed. Stop factory gates under siege. Stop advised delaying arrival. Stop. Too late to turn back now. You're committed to this course, whatever the consequences. As midnight approaches, you prepare for bed in the surprisingly comfortable sleeping compartment of your private car. Richardson helps you into silk pajamas and a monogrammed dressing gown. Will there be anything else, sir? He asks, his routine question carrying extra weight tonight. You look at this man who has served your the real Vander Hughes for years, who knows your habits and secrets better than most family members, who has witnessed your worst moments and kept your confidences. Richardson, you say slowly, have you ever considered what it must be like to work in one of my factories? He blinks, genuinely startled by the philosophical turn. I cannot say I have, sir. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, no safety measures. Children younger than 14 working alongside dangerous machinery for wages that barely cover food and shelter. Richardson's face remains professionally blank, but his eyes betray discomfort. I imagine it must be challenging, sir. Challenging, you repeat. Yes, I suppose that's one word for it. An awkward silence falls between you, a moment of genuine human connection breaking through the rigid master-servant dynamic. Will you be requiring the sleeping draft tonight, sir? Richardson finally asks, retreating to the safety of routine. No, I think I need a clear head for tomorrow. Very good, sir. Good night. When he's gone, you lie in your berth, feeling the rhythm of the train as it carries you toward Pittsburgh. The gentle rocking should be soothing, but sleep remains elusive. You think about the workers who will greet your arrival not with the bowing and scraping of household servants, but with anger and suspicion. To them, you're not a human being, but a symbol of oppression, a faceless entity who profits from their suffering. And they're not entirely wrong, are they? Your beautiful mansions, your private rail car, your army of servants, all built on the bent backs of workers, all paid for by a system designed to extract maximum profit at minimum cost, human or otherwise. As the train speeds through the darkness of rural Pennsylvania, you wonder what will happen when you reach Pittsburgh. Will your modest reforms be enough? Will the workers accept them? Or have things gone too far for compromise? Will you find yourself facing a mob? Or worse? And what if you wake up tomorrow back in your own time? Will the real Vander Hughes return to his body, tear up your reforms and unleash more violence on his workers? Is anything you're doing making any real difference? Outside your window, the night is punctuated by the glow of steel mills in the distant Pittsburgh coming into view in the pre-dawn hours, the steel city where fortunes are made and bodies are broken in equal measure. You think about the contrasts you've witnessed in just a few days as a Gilded Age billionaire, the 97-room cottage in Newport and the tenements of New York, the 12-course dinners and the workers who can barely afford bread, the army of servants catering to your every whim, and the children working 12-hour shifts in your factories. America in 1895 is truly two different worlds, and you've had the rare privilege or perhaps burden of seeing both. As exhaustion finally overtakes you, you drift towards sleep with one final thought. Whatever happens in Pittsburgh, whether you remain in this Gilded Age body or return to your own time, you'll never see wealth the same way again. The true cost of extreme inequality has been written on your soul in a way no history book could ever convey. The train whistle sounds, signalling the approach to Pittsburgh Station. In a few hours, you'll face the consequences of a system you didn't create but have briefly inhabited. You'll look into the eyes of people whose lives have been shaped and sometimes destroyed by the pursuit of profit, above all else. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find a way to bring a small measure of justice to this gilded world of extremes. The gentle rocking of the train finally lulls you towards sleep, your mind drifting between past and present, between the world you know and the world you've glimpsed. As consciousness fades, you find yourself wondering, is this how history always works? The fortunate few living in luxury while the many struggle for crumbs? Or is another way possible? The train rounds a bend, the lights of Pittsburgh glowing stronger now. Tomorrow will bring confrontation, perhaps danger, certainly difficult choices. But for now, sleep comes at last, deep and dreamless, carrying you away from the moral complexities of being a Gilded Age billionaire, if only for a few hours. Your last thought before darkness claims you is simple but profound. In any era, in any economic system, the measure of a society isn't how it treats its most privileged members, but how it cares for its most vulnerable. And by that measure, the Gilded Age, for all its mansions and artwork and technological marvels, has failed dramatically. As you sink into sleep, the contrast between your silk-lined private railcar and the workers' tenements you'll see tomorrow couldn't be more stark. The gulf between the America of the Vanderbilts and Carnegies and the America of anonymous laborers couldn't be wider. Two worlds, separated by wealth, but bound by a shared humanity that the Gilded Age tries desperately to deny. Your breathing slows, your body relaxes, and for a moment the weight of your Gilded Age identity lifts. Whatever tomorrow brings in Pittsburgh, tonight you rest just another human being wrapped in the common vulnerability of sleep that makes equals of billionaires and workers alike.